Hi everyone, this is Clint from Persuasive Evangelism, and today we're going to talk about God's Not Dead 2, which is a sequel to God's Not Dead. It's a really strong sequel. I enjoy this movie. It came out in 2016. I think between God's Not Dead and the sequel, I would pick God's Not Dead, but I do like this one a lot. Some of the characters in the first one are in this one, but it's a whole new situation. The main character is a new character named Grace Wesley. She's a teacher, teaches history, philosophy in high school, and she's a Christian, and she was talking about historical figures that talked about peace, like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and so on. And one of the students brought up Jesus, that he was too. And so he talked about, in a historical sense of Jesus, talking, about peace, love your neighbor, and all that. But one of the students texts their parents that the teacher was talking about Jesus in class. So then she's brought in to the principal and then the board, and then it's gonna be on her record, but she wants to fight back. She said she did nothing wrong. She should be able to, because Jesus is a historical figure, and should be able to talk about Jesus in a historical sense in a history class, and not pretend he didn't exist. So it escalates into a lawsuit, and the school district has all their high-paid attorneys, lawyers, and huge team. And then she gets one lawyer. It's played by Jesse Metcalf. He does a good job. He's a young lawyer, and he's not a Christian, but he doesn't like to lose, so he starts working with her. Some of the returning characters, Reverend Dave and Reverend Jude, are in it, and one of them might be on the jury, but there's some twists and turns with the jury selection. And what they always say is God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. And then a couple other returning members are Martin. He was the Chinese foreign exchange student who was in the class in the first one, listening to the main character debate the teacher atheist if God exists. And based on that, he becomes a Christian in the first movie. But now in the second movie, he's going to the church, Reverend Dave's church, to ask questions. He has dozens and dozens of questions, which turns out good because it becomes very knowledgeable. And then near the end, one of the other new characters comes into the church, just confused and stuff, and starts asking questions. And the Reverend isn't there, but he is. And then he is able to help her because he's learned and has more knowledge. There's in the first movie, there's a left-wing blogger who's just all about her career and all that. And in the first movie, she finds out she has cancer, and that just shatters her world, because she goes, I don't have time for cancer, because only what exists in now is important to her. But then she has to start questioning her existence, what happens when you die, and all this. But she returns in this movie as well to help the main character in this, to fight the school district. And there's Pat Boone, the singer, is in it. He plays the father of Grace Wesley. And the lawyer that's with the school district is played by Ray Wise. He does a great job of just playing this evil, lawyer. Like, he says he wants to prove once and for all that God is dead, and he just has this grin, but just he stab you in the back once you turn. He does a great job. One reason I really like this movie too, there's other plot lines as well, but they bring on the jury, when someone to talk to the jury is Lee Strobel, who plays himself, the author. And that's how I discovered Lee Strobel. He wrote The Case for Christ, and he's written several other books like Case for Grace, Case for a Creator, Case for Heaven. But he plays himself. He was an atheist journalist, and his wife becomes a Christian, and he hated that, so he was going to prove that the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen. But as he investigated it, he saw the evidence. There was so strong evidence that Jesus did die and was raised from the grave. And then, of course, God working on his heart, he became a Christian, and he wrote his first book, Case for Christ, about it. So I recommend that book. I recommend all his books. But I discovered him through this movie, and that's how I started reading his books. And the other person I discovered, another author, J. Warner Wallace, he was an atheist cold case detective in LA, and he would like look at old murder cases and so on, look at, eyewitness testimony several decades old, and he started using those techniques and investigating like the Gospels, the four Gospels, eyewitness testimonies, and just all the evidence. He became a Christian, and he wrote a book about it called Cold Case Christianity, which I recommend. That was his first book. Another book I really like of his is called Person of Interest. So if Jesus is the Messiah, he died, Son of God, died 2,000 years ago, rose again. The book builds up the case, like all the evidence building up to that only Jesus could be that person, and then the effect, like if Jesus really rose from the dead, what was the effect on culture, society, everything. And then he just shows it all, so up to Jesus' death and resurrection, and then the aftermath. It's really fascinating book. But so that's how I discovered J. Warner Wallace too, from this movie. But it's a good movie. I really enjoy this series, and I recommend it. And this one's God's Not Dead Part 2. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. God bless.